Hello, my friends. Welcome to today's episode of Stand Up. I've got a great, thoughtful, brilliant, and enlightening conversation with the great Barry Ritholtz, who talked with me about economic, finance, inflation, AI, climate change, and why he skipped Barbenheimer this past weekend. Sorry for the late posting. I generally try to get the podcast posted by midnight. Some days I don't get it up until then. I go to bed, get up around 4, and get it up by 6 a.m. is the secondary deadline. Today, I blew through that, and for good reason. As I told you, this week and next would be erratic posting, different times, frequency, probably not as much, because getting ready for and headed to the Southern Hemisphere on Thursday night, the 27th. I'll be headed to Sydney, Australia, where my very close friend David Campbell, his wife and family live, because he's turning the big 5-0, and I have been invited to come down and celebrate with him. So I'll be down there till the 9th of August, and I will be posting interviews. I don't know how much, but I will definitely be taking some much-needed time off. That's right. I will be taking some time off. Hard to say, hard to believe, but I know deep down and intellectually that it is necessary for me, because yesterday I feel like the stress of the past 6 weeks kind of came to a head when I couldn't find my passport, which is necessary to travel to other countries, apparently all of them. So before I share with you the conclusion of what happened with the passport and how it happened and how I feel like I've come to this point and wanted to explain it to you, I thought I would just tell you that since about the beginning of June, things have been challenging for me. Val was having a really hard time with some emotional stuff, some stress and anxiety. She's done the brave work to start to look into her childhood trauma, which I think I'd love to talk with her and so many more of you about. Really, really hard stuff. And she decided that it was just not going to work for us to take our big European family vacation. She was really concerned about the money. And my daughter, Ava, is going to college this year. She wasn't that enthusiastic about it. She wasn't really saying much. But most importantly, Val was really struggling and just didn't think it was going to help her. Thought it was going to create more stress. So she decided that she would cancel the family vacation. Ava was actually pretty okay with it, more than, and went to camp for an extra week. Julia went to camp early. And while she was really pretty disappointed, she understood as well. Both the girls have been really supportive. And instead, Val decided to go to be with her family in Sicily, where her mom's family is from, and where she spent much of every summer of her life, and where I've spent a good amount of time with her as well over our marriage of 22 years. And so the girls went to camp. But before that, I had a lot to do with them, and I've had several gigs that I've had going on that I had to work and prepare for, and of course, the podcast daily, which I love doing. But it's been a lot. It's been a lot, and I miss Val. I, of course, want to support her, but all the extra responsibility has been overwhelming for me. Not great at it, and I miss my girls, of course, but I've been doing my practice, and I have really been doing very well. The last time I had kind of a setback like this, I was spiraling. I was depressed for the first time. And the time before that, when I lost my job, similar. This time, this setback, this struggle has been much different because of the practice that I've developed, my kind of morning routine that you hear people talking about, which I now have working for me most days. But I'll tell you, this trip couldn't have come at a better time, because I'm at the end of my rope. I am knotted up. I am maxed out. This guy needs a break. I'm not going to get too into the specifics of it all and how it's affected me. And I know without listing kind of some of the specific things, it might not sound like a lot. And for a whole bunch of you listening that have struggles that I can't even possibly imagine how you deal with each and every day, I know it's possible, and I might be thinking, this guy over here is a real pansy. He is got the resilience of a wet napkin, crumbles easy under fire, panics at the drop of a dime. Yeah, a lot of that is true. of me. And that's what I'm working on, building resilience, taking the leap, trying to understand that when things fall apart, there are practices, there are routines and resources and people that can help you. And that is why I'm always happy to share this stuff with you, because you're not alone. I know I'm not alone. And yesterday when I lost my passport, I posted it on both Facebook and Twitter. I said, I know this is pretty embarrassing, but I have a international trip on Thursday and I can't find my passport. And this community came out for me, as you always do, and as I have tried so hard to do for so many of you. And as a collective, this community always shows up for each other. And so many of you have met each other and become friends. And it's the greatest thing in my life. And it certainly is what keeps me positive on days and times when I'm struggling, knowing that we have done this and that you are out there. So many of you reached out to me. I can't list everybody off, but people really tried to help me find my passport, from asking, did you look here? Did you try this? Have you thought of hypnosis? To Megan reaching out to me and saying she's going to get this done as a result of Tina Winsett telling her what had happened, and Megan reaching out, and she was going to call Chuck Schumer's senator's office because she had helped her daughter with a similar issue last year. Point is, so many came out, and it was awesome. And it felt so good. And I hope that I can be that for you, or someone else in this community can be that, or has been that for you. So it's a happy story and a happy ending, yet as embarrassing as it is. Here's what happened. Yesterday, I drove back from my parents' place in upstate New York, about 4 hours drive after dropping the dog off. That's another thing. I kind of miss my dog, but to be honest with you, not that much. She's always just sitting there staring at me and making me feel guilty, like I'm supposed to be doing something with her. So it's kind of nice that she's not right next to me. She's with my parents. But I came back and I immediately went to get my passport out from where we keep the family passports. And all I could find was an expired one. So I texted Val and she tried to tell me that it should be in there. And I thought I had it out on my own because I needed it for some kind of ID purposes at some point. So I had started to believe that I misplaced it. I spent 5 to 6 hours tearing up my home. I mean, I looked in the shed, in the garage. I looked in every single article of clothing and jacket and baggage and under the couch and you name it. I could not find that passport. And then I had to go into New York City last night and moderate a panel with Dean Obeidallah and Maysoon Zaid, which was wonderful, but it was the least present, unfortunately, I've been. I don't think anybody noticed, but I was just an absolute mental wreck because, as I said, well, I think you understand this, the stakes. I've already explained them. Leaving Thursday, there's no way to get a passport. I contacted my congressman, which many people thought I should do, and which was really fraught for me because he's the Republican that beat Mondaire Jones, and I don't want to have anything to do with this guy, much less ask him for a favor. But I was hoping a staffer could take care of it because he knows who I am, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't going out of his way for me. So I filled out a form in hopes I could get it turned around. There was no appointments, by the way, to get passports anywhere in the country, they told me, for the next 14 days. Oh, and then many people suggested these special passport agencies that do rush passports. They couldn't help me within 3 days. It was a done deal. I was dead in the water. I came home after the gig. I looked some more, and I sat down and looked at my expired passport, the only one I could find. And I looked at the picture, and it looked very recent. And I was like, there's white in my beard. How is this expired? And I read it for the 10th time. And this time, I realized that 2019 was not when it expired, but it was the date issued. The expiration was 2029. I read it, and I read it again, and then I sent a picture to 2 people and had them confirm that I was reading it right. Folks, I never lost the passport. It was right where Val said it was. I read it wrong. I thought it was gone, and everything I just told you ensued. I came undone. I was panicking. I didn't know what I was going to do. I told my friends in Australia. They were upset. I was upset. And everybody else who I told was upset for me. But here is what I'm taking away from this. When your body tells you, when your mind tells you, when you read a sentence 10 times and every time it's wrong until the 11th, when you finally realize that you've read this wrong this many times, it means you need to take a break. You need to get help. You're stressed out. And that's what a good friend of mine said to me. She said, the reason you read that wrong is because you're so stressed about everything that's going on and this trip, and you want it so badly, and you're at the end of your rope, and you just are so tired. You read it wrong. And so it's embarrassing kind of to admit. And I know some of you shaking your head, oh, don't be embarrassed. But I think it's not the embarrassment that I read something wrong, that I could be so mistaken. It's that I got in my mind in the ensuing hours to a place where I had given up. I had given up on everything, on life. How could this happen to me? Right into a self-pity spiral of patheticness. And that's the part where I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that I wasn't able to stay optimistic. You'll find it. It'll be okay. You're going to make it to Australia to see your friends. Don't give up. That's the part where I get upset with myself, where I'm disappointed, where I am, I guess, embarrassed that at this point in my life, I could spiral in that situation instead of staying calm and staying focused and staying, frankly, optimistic. That's who I want to be. That's who I'm working to be the next time. Naming my embarrassments, my problems, my stupidities, my bad behaviors is a healthy and good thing for me to do as the host of this show on a platform like this with an audience like you. So I guess this is what they mean when who are they? The experts, the people who talk about such things say, listen to your body. Be mindful of what's happening in your life. And I've been doing this podcast almost every day for months now. And frankly, nothing has been easy since I left SiriusXM. So many of you are self-employed and constantly remind me of the both pros and cons of it all. But you got to work. You got to keep working. And you can't stop with everything that's happened in the industry of podcasting, really rapidly, always changing. Now Twitter basically transforming and not being the promotional tool that it was once best for me. It's hard. It's hard to keep it going. And I just love the work. I love hosting this show. I love that so many of you have supported it, which has allowed me to make my living doing what I love the most. And I really hope and worry a lot whether or not I can keep it going. So with all that being said, I got to take some time off. I just have to have some experiences. I have to go see my friend who, by the way, this is going to be a really magical, wonderful connection because I have been talking to him every day on the Marco Polo app for 3 years. We've almost never missed a day where we chatted about what is happening in our minds, our bodies, our relationships, our lives, our parenting, our kids, all of it. And it has been the healthiest relationship I've ever had in many ways. He is such a positive force for me and such a constant friend. We probably have become codependent. I will be taping a conversation with him about our friendship and how it has unfolded. We met years ago when we were both working the nightclubs in New York City. He is a singer, performer, Broadway performer, and cabaret singer, and me, of course, as a stand-up comedian. And we lost touch, but we reconnected, and we've been staying connected to help each other process our own challenges, our mental health issues, and everything else. It's been the healthiest, best. And so to go see him for his 50th birthday is going to be really special, and to stay with his amazing wife and kids. I'm really looking forward to that. I need this time off, and I so appreciate you for supporting me through it all. So that's the end of my 12-minute message. Man, that was a lot. I hope that it wasn't too much. If it was, I hope you fast forwarded, skipped ahead, and got to why you came here to listen to my conversation with Barry Ritholtz. So thank you again for any of your comments. I look forward to your feedback. standupwithpete@gmail.com. I really hope that this resonated and this explained some things to you. I know that so many of you care deeply about me and my well-being, and I want to thank you ahead of time. But I hope to hear from you. We'll talk more about it at the Hangout, which is going to be Wednesday, tomorrow night. I'll be hosting a Hangout at 8 p.m. I hope to see you there. But now it's time for Barry Ritholtz, who's the host of the Masters in Business Show on the Bloomberg Network, a podcast, the author of Bailout Nation, the president and founder of Ritholtz Wealth, and one of our favorite people to talk to, the high and mighty Ritholtz, everybody. Yeah, did you watch Barbie or Oppenheimer? Did you watch Barbenheimer? This weekend I sat on the beach. I read a couple of books, and then last night I saw John Pizzarelli play out at the West Hampton Theater. So no movies this weekend. Very cultured. What, you read 2 books in a weekend? I started 2 books. I haven't finished them. One is the big Lebowski. No. Short. I would remember the big Bopper. The big fail. The Big Fail by Joe Nocera and Bethany McLean. Yeah. What's that about? About 300 pages. Oh. The Big Fail, what the pandemic revealed about who America protects and who it leaves behind. Oh, that sounds good. So I'm starting it a little cautious because they talk about all the mistakes that were made. And the introduction doesn't come out and say masks are useless, but it's implied. And it's kind of like, whenever anybody says masks don't do anything, great, tell you what. Here's a ward filled with tuberculosis patients. By the way, it's not regular TB. It's antibiotic-resistant strain of TB. Go ahead, walk through. Ignore all the nurses and doctors wearing masks because what do they know? It's useless. There is a question of a certain type of mask's effectiveness in certain situations, and it is a very tough question to answer, but the perfect generally speaking thing to say is what you just said. Do you want your surgeons to wear masks or not? It's that simple. Why not try to limit risk of infection? Who gets hurt? The worst case scenario is you wore a mask. Right. I mean, they're annoying, especially with glasses. They fog up. Sure. But at one point in time, we knew so little that we were wiping down our groceries. So, you know, and it's just that sort of stuff. So The Big Fail sounds interesting. It's so fun. Listen, they're both great writers. It's really intriguing. And then the book I was kind of reading for pleasure is called Many Things Under a Rock, The Mysteries of Octopuses. And it's quite fascinating. Very nice. I like your selection there. Now, what happened? You got locked out of your account? You got hacked on your Twitter? Yeah, so at Ritholtz, July 8th, I go out to dinner Saturday night. I come home at 10:30, and I see there's an email from Twitter. Hey, did you request this change? And I go, first, I'm not sure if it's real or not. So I go to Twitter, because that's a classic phishing sort of thing. And I go to Twitter, and I can't access anything. And then I realize the people who took over the account changed. By the way, I used to have 2-factor authentication until Elon Musk says, no, you must pay for basic security. Right. And at the time, I was offended and didn't. In hindsight, I wish I did. Also, in hindsight, don't spend 10 years building a following on somebody else's platform. Right. That's something to think about. Or build a following on everybody's platform: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Because as long as you're doing it on one, you might as well do it on the other. But so Elon fired, 60, 80% of the people, 70%, some crazy number. And so now it's all algo based. There are very few humans left. So I try and regain access to the account, and I'm all to no avail. And after 3 or 4 days of trying, I say, I know people at Bloomberg. They're a big media organization. Let's see if I can reach out. So someone puts me not in touch with a human, but said, hey, they elevated your case. So try it now. So I was able to regain access to the account, change the name back to Ritholtz, and change the password. And then the next day I go to do something, and it locks me out. Wait, why? It's the same fucking phone number and email address the account has had since 2009.
not only are there no humans, but the algos they have are not the most sophisticated algorithms. You would think, hey, if your phone number is hacked, that's one thing. If your email is hacked, you're kind of screwed. But this was just somebody must have somehow on some list accessed some. And I forgot, I had a medium, not a super strong password, but I had two-factor authentication. I felt relatively safe. So since then, I've changed a ton of emails, a ton of passwords.
Somebody purposely wanted your account?
No, they purposely want any account with 6 figures of followers so they can, push some shitcoin to my followers who would immediately laugh and know it wasn't me, but that doesn't matter. So at the same time, we have an account, Ritholtz Wealth, at Ritholtz Wealth is the firm. P.S. These geniuses changed the account name to Ritholtz Wealths. So maybe they wouldn't go after clients. Who knows?
Oh, wow.
So I got that back, and then I set up a second account at the office for Barry_Ritholtz, and I'm all the way up to 100 followers. Whoopee!
You never got your original account back?
I still haven't gotten it back. I've been told there are people with millions of followers that it takes months and months and months.
Oh, wow.
And it's frustrating. Plus, I use Twitter to DM people all the time, and I had conversations with people. I don't want to light up Dick Thaler's phone, but I'll send him a text. Hey, did you see this? What do you think of that? This is kind of interesting. So today I actually had a question about somebody who's in his field, and I sent him an email, which just seems like it's not an email level contact.
I totally understand what you're saying. It's a real shame.
There's a hierarchy of is this? You don't call somebody unless it's like, hey, this is really important, right? Or you're somebody's grandmother and you don't understand modern communication,
right?
And DMs are like, you don't really DM people with bullshit, although I sometimes am guilty of that with sending funny stuff back and forth to friends. And
you do that. You do that to me. You send me funny cartoons on occasion. But you do whatever's easiest, I feel, with me, text or DM. But now I guess it would just, you're not doing the Twitter. So what do you think of what's happened lately there? He changed the name overnight, and now it's X.
To X. Yeah,
some people say he's just, if you're wondering what he's doing, the answer is he's purposely just trying to kill it. I don't buy that at all. That just sounds...
Oh, no, you wouldn't spend $44 billion killing it.
Well,
that's
just a hard thing to rationalize for most of us, but do you think there's any possibility that he doesn't want desperately to save it and make money off of it?
I mean, I can't believe he is just going to burn $44 billion.
Do you think that there's any way that Twitter can come back and compete? Do you think that there will be any real platform that's similar, or do you think we'll always be fragmented now?
So here's what we've learned since Elon's has taken over Twitter. First, it's very hard, and you've heard me say this time and time again. Success is a delicate and fragile flower. It is once in a blue moon that something comes together that's amazing and wonderful, and the vast majority of attempts fail. And I like to use my favorite example of part of the reason we don't understand this is a concept called survivorship bias. Right? If someone wants to put money into a play or open a new restaurant, right? A good restaurant is a great business, but restaurants as an industry are terrible businesses. They have razor thin margins. They can be trendy. They can fall into trend. They can fall out of popularity. It's just a hard gig, right? It's a really tough gig. But for some reason, people find it sexy, and The Bear is going to make it much worse. If you haven't seen that, it's strong recommend.
Yeah.
But people are going to really don't understand that. I just went to this restaurant, and the food was great, and we had a great time. And, man, they're doing bang-up business. Let's invest in it. Well, that's one. Now, how many other restaurants were in that exact space or the surrounding neighborhood that have failed? The vast majority of new businesses fail within 2 years, many of which within less than a year. So the same thing with plays. Oh, Hamilton. Man, they're making money.
Right.
How many plays are in Hamilton? I used to use the number something like 5 million manuscripts are submitted as books, the vast majority of which are unpublished. I think it's something like 300 or 400,000 new titles come out a year. And of those, a few dozen make the bestsellers list. Just think about the math, 50 out of 5 million. It's much harder to do, and people just don't realize that. So Twitter had a critical mass. It had a product that worked. It purposefully wasn't LinkedIn. It wasn't Facebook. It wasn't Instagram. It wasn't TikTok. And you had this critical mass of both consumers and producers of media and content, and it was really fascinating. I don't know if he has destroyed it yet. It still, to me, seems salvageable. He wildly overpaid after agreeing not to perform due diligence. Like, what the hell was that about? But I don't think it's dead yet. I think it's still savable, and I don't know what the hell X.com is. Sometimes when you are a consumer of a product, it doesn't mean you're going to be a good producer of that product. Like, I drove a Ford F-150 pickup truck, and it was fun. I think I'm going to open up a pickup truck company because I enjoyed this. And he liked to tweet. His expertise is not social media; it's other things. Right? He joined PayPal and made it better. He joined Tesla and made it better. I believe he launched SpaceX on its own, and through a lot of government subsidies, has turned that into a wildly successful company. So he certainly has a skill and an ability that few others possess, but he's got an engineer's mind. He doesn't have a psychologist's mind. And I think if you want to fix Twitter, or at least make Twitter better, or make Twitter more financially, supportable, I don't think it's a software or the engineering that's the problem. I think it's the entire human engineering. You have to figure out what motivates people, how to get them to pay money, how to sell. Like, they've lost half of their advertising.
Crazy.
It's just... So the question is, how long is he going to subsidize it? He doesn't really understand sunk costs, and he should have when he had the opportunity to walk away by writing a check for $1 billion. Hey, he'd be $30-40 billion ahead if he just wrote the check and say, yeah, I fucked up. I shouldn't have signed a no due diligence contract. What he really needs is some people around him who aren't just yes men.
Right.
His entourage are just like punks and morons and hanger-oners and the whole... Listen, I understand sharks have remora fish attached, but at least they clear the parasites. They perform a function. They're
not doing him any favors.
His entourage, they're all parasites. They're all giving him terrible advice.
That's always going to be the case.
They encourage his worst. There are... The Kaizen methodology of Toyota is kind of interesting because we give medals for firemen who run into a building and rescue people when the building is burning, but we don't give medals to the guy who says, if we make this adjustment on the gas line, we could reduce 99% of the accidental fires in this house. And that was Toyota's approach, that we are constantly looking to figure out, how do we avoid disasters in the future? And so, you don't get the medal for not buying a wildly overpriced, pointless social media network. Think about all the other billionaires who looked at this and said, the fuck do I want to buy this? This is silly. So you don't know all these other people who are smart. You just look at the one guy who is at one time, and he, depending on where the market closes, may still be the wealthiest person in the world, and says, what the hell is this guy thinking? And by the way, $44 billion is real money, even if someone worth $200 billion. It's 25% of your net worth. Seems like a kind of wacky gamble to me. And it's a shame that he has people around him who don't say, Elon, you've had some really smart ideas and some really dumb ideas, but no idea is dumber than this one.
Can you see any reason at all, or any precedent as to why changing the name would be a good thing?
Probably because he's going to use this to promote some other thing. Maybe that's his AI project or something. I don't know. I
mean, imagine changing HBO to just Max. Why would you do that?
So you're familiar with the basic bell curve, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some brilliant corporate managers who are insightful and creative and intelligent. And then there are a lot of guys who just suck. The HBO Max crew, these guys suck. The Paramount Discovery, the whole Turner Classic Movies snafu, those guys suck.
Yeah.
Lots of corporate executives follow the Peter Principle, where they get promoted up to their level of incompetence. And, I think I look at Delta over the past 10 years. That's a great turnaround story. Delta used to be the worst airline in America. Now it's like a 5-way tie, and Delta is, probably the best airline.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, Southwest is just this shithole cattle call, and I won't even talk about Spirit. And I've rarely flown American and not gotten off and said, just burn every last one of them. I can't believe I was on this.
So you've seen Delta be turned around, but at the same time, that's not going to necessarily be the case with,
very hard. It's very hard to turn around a company that's failing. And all the big turnaround stories because they're rare.
Right.
The return of Steve Jobs to Apple and turning that around and turning it to that's a rare story. You hear every now and IBM went through like 3 or 4 turnarounds. I think they're pretty much gonna just sail off into the consultancy sunset. But they were a typewriter company, and then they were a mainframe company, and then they were a PC company. I think they were very early into AI. They didn't do anything with it. Google was notoriously early into AI, has failed to really capitalize on it the way Microsoft has. Microsoft has just continued to hum along over the years. Maybe they lost the sort of a home computer advantage when Apple resurged. And then, Steve Ballmer was a classic terrible CEO. Ballmer said something about the Apple iPod. Who's going to pay for that? Where's the garbage product? And then the iPhone, no one's paying $400 for a phone. It's like he literally set Microsoft back a decade, and then the new guy came in, and Nadal, and basically Natalia, what's his name? Safiel, I don't remember the new CEO's name. Anyway, now I have to look this up because my OCD is Satya Nadella. Oh, that's close. And suddenly Microsoft is hitting on all cylinders again.
Right.
But just because a company is great doesn't mean a bad. Warren Buffett loves to say, I would rather have good company with a bad CEO than a bad company with a good CEO. Because a good company with a bad CEO, you can replace them. Right. And look at Microsoft as a perfect example.
You mentioned AI, and I always want to ask you your thoughts, how much you've been paying attention, if you've been using it, and if you've seen anything or heard anything that you think is interesting to share about how this very rapidly developing technology that is supposed to revolutionize, everything.
So the most interesting thing I heard that because I tried doing a couple of things, and I frequently would get null data set. And when you inquire, what does this mean? Oh, well, you have to create the data set for it to search. And I'm like, that's the whole point of me asking. I don't want to create that data set. So I said, organize all 500 of the Masters in Business podcast at these links into some sort of organizational structure based on who the guest is.
Oh.
Like it could have just given me an alphabetized list for all I know. Null data set. What do I have to do? Well, you have to take all that information and put it into a spreadsheet. No, I ask because I don't want to do that, or I hire an intern to do that.
Right.
So, but the most interesting thing that someone had said to me was, the AI tools you're using today are the worst AI tools that there ever will exist in history.
Sure.
And each subsequent iteration will get better and better. So the interesting thing so far, artificial intelligence isn't especially intelligent, but it's not as dumb as it used to be. And if you've seen some of the stuff that can be done with images and video and audio, like there's a lot of security issues and a lot of concerns there. That's kind of interesting. we need to put some rules in place because this could very much run amok. We're in the middle of a TV writer strike.
Yeah.
Stop and think about what was done with these AI training tools where they let it loose on Wikipedia. I don't know if the editors who wrote that basically anticipated this sort of usage. And granted, it's open source and nothing prevents anyone from doing this. If they used all of Wikipedia, you kind of wonder how much other stuff have they gone out and used without permission.
You know, my daughter's going to be a freshman in college next year, and I think she's going to be the first class to never have to write a paper because they're all going to do it on that. You know, they're all going to do it.
But there's now tools that can tell if a paper was written with AI.
Good.
So what happens is you have an arms race between, just like you do with hackers, there's an arms race between the white hats and the black hats. There are some AI classes where the teacher says, we'll go out and use AI to write this, where the purpose of this is to find out what's a good source of writing, what's a bad source of writing. Mm-hmm. A couple of companies like Reuters and AP have been using AI to write stories that are just based on these facts, and they create a very simple format. The problem is AI can't really tell fact from fiction because it's not smart yet, and they call it hallucinating when they give you bad facts. It's because somewhere, listen, how accurate is the internet? Not especially. Okay, let's go train a artificial intelligence tool on the internet. How accurate are those results going to be? Not especially. I assume all this stuff is going to iterate out and it's going to get better and better, but it's going to take a little while. I don't know how long that is, but it's kind of interesting.
It's very interesting. Have you been paying attention to the writers and now the after SAG actors strike and what that means for the entertainment industry?
No, but I haven't run out of things to watch yet.
Yeah.
But once I run out of things, then maybe
you're going to be pissed. You don't care about us now, but when you run out of things, then you're going to care. Thanks.
So look, when you look at how the position of television show writer has evolved, every time, this is sort of parallels what took place with music. Every time the format changed, you went from albums to cassettes to 8-tracks to CDs to streaming. Every time the artists get screwed a little bit along the way, and they're already been pretty screwed. So when streaming came along and residuals came along, they changed the contract. Writers can't make a living. It's one thing you work on a hit show, which is rare. Talk about survivorship bias and rarity. You work on a show that's around for more than 3 seasons, so you're going to go into syndication. You can earn a living on your syndication, not a great living, but a decent living for the rest of your life. And now you can continue to, do creative things like write new shows and come up with new stuff. That kind of went away when we shifted to streaming. And the writers are saying, hey, we want to participate in the back end of something. If The Sopranos is still being watched, or Game of Thrones, or whatever it is, and I was a writer on that show, I want to get paid for that. That is the nature of entertainment. I write this. It's not a one-off. It's in order to participate in the perpetual revenue that this generates. And that's pretty reasonable.
It's pretty reasonable, but you see the attitudes of these executives, and it seems like it's not going to be happening anytime soon. Not to mention, by the way, the UPS strike. I don't know if you're paying attention to that. Actually, is that still happening? I haven't looked at it. So
far, it looks like it's going to happen. And, it's interesting. During the past year or two, when we had a spike in inflation, which has since come back down to 3% year over year, the real interesting question is, how much did companies take advantage of the general chaos to push price increases through that were not actually driven by input costs? Meaning, my widget that I make, the widget material has gone up 40%. I got to raise prices. It's just, hey, everything seems to be crazy. Raise prices 10%. See if people scream. All right, raise them another 10%. Like that sort of stuff. And to be fair, hey, that's their job. Their job is to maximize profits. The challenge is that now you have labor turning around and saying, oh, well, you guys cranked everything up and you made it more expensive to live. And our contract ends on the 30th of August or whatever the date is. And we want X as an increase because we need to catch up. Right. Even if prices stabilize, we've reset to a higher price. You have a year or two of much higher inflation. And then unless there's deflation or disinflation, right, unless we actually see prices going lower, that's deflation, you're going to need a raise to keep up with it. So that's why everybody's saying, I can't afford to live on my old salary. I need a little more.
Well, yeah, and you're seeing, hopefully, I thought we were seeing a real momentum change in terms of organized labor having a lot more influence. That was...
Oh, no, that's under no circumstance.
That was the trend.
Organized labor is dead. And every now and then it rears its head to kind of remind you that at one point in time you had some...
what do you mean? Well, how could you be so flip as to say organized labor is dead?
Because you look at how many union members were there 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago? Well,
certainly organized labor is not nearly at the strength it once was, but it's not dead. I mean, there's tons and tons of companies and entire industries that are still unionized, certainly in the public sector. Teachers. Well,
public sector for sure is still surviving, but when it comes to private sector, you got a couple of Starbucks here and a couple of Amazons there, but the number of households that have a primary source of income is affiliated with a union is a fraction, or was. I remember when researching the Chrysler bailout when I was working on Bailout Nation in 1980. So they bail out Chrysler, and at the time I think there was 2.2 million members of the UAW, and by 20 years later it was 300 and something thousand. It's a almost 90% decrease. So, you got the Teamsters and you got a handful of non-public sector unions that have held on. If you want to, other people, and I don't have enough expertise to say this definitively, but other labor economists have said, if you want to understand the hollowing out of the middle class, you have to look closely at the decline of private sector unions.
Yes.
And how many households, New York passed the law a couple of years ago that you can't ask what someone was making previously, right? Because that's a sort of a feature of what a union does. Hey, if you're a union X at this level, we know your salary and you want that. So typically the hirers, the companies, they know the market better than the hiree, and so it sort of levels the asymmetry of information. It takes some of the advantage away,
to say the
for
least.
Better or worse. I don't know if it is.
I wanted to talk to you about inflation. You just had a cool video you did with your partner there, Josh Brown, about everything I think we got wrong about inflation. I think it was, and I did
a blog post, 12 contrarian thoughts on inflation.
There it is. And I hear that the Fed is going to be raising rates tomorrow. Is that right?
That's the expectation, another quarter point, even though there's no reason for them to do it. And it's probably somewhat damaging. They've already won. Just stop. Every time rates go higher, mortgage rates go higher.
Right.
Every time mortgage rates go higher, prices of homes become less affordable, and 61% of the mortgages that are already current outside, 61% of homes with mortgages have a mortgage rate under 4%. And a lot of people, that's a crazy stat. I'll share a chart with you. And that's 61%. Why are they going anywhere? Why are you going to move? Hey, you could move from a house that's 500 to 650 or even 750, and maybe your mortgage was $4,000 a month, and now it's going to go up 50%, but you're getting a whole lot more house. I think the average person over the course of 30 years can swing that sort of increase. But when your mortgage goes from 3.5, 3 3/4, or 4 up to 7.5, suddenly that's a giant increase. It's not, you're not going from 2,000 to 3,000. You're going from 2,000 to almost 5,000. It's a giant shift.
You don't need that big house anyway, is what I would tell them.
It's not the size of the house; it's the location. So I could take a house half my size and put it on the water, and it's double the price.
Sure.
Of this house. Yeah. It's or put it, on the Central Park West, or I don't know about San Francisco anymore, but there are all sorts of parts of the country that have seen not any inventory increase and a huge increase in price. Miami has just gone crazy. Miami is almost the same as New York now.
Is that right?
The whole appeal of Miami was it was half the price, a fraction of the price.
Tell me more about the contrarian thoughts about inflation or what we got wrong.
So, my favorite one of this was transitory. The Fed had said these price increases are transitory, and then 6 months later walked away from it. And the ironic part of that is they more or less got it right. The problem with that concept is that, hey, transitory is just going to take a lot longer than you expect. I think most people thought that transitory was 6 months to a year. We've never locked down. You said that word a few times, and it's in reference of the global lockdown supply interruptions. So what happened? We had a global lockdown. Everybody sheltered in place. We had a handful of people that were out and about working, healthcare professionals, police, food delivery people, but everybody else was stuck at home. And then, now we're opening the doors and everybody is working again. And what ended up happening is that causes a giant snafu in terms of shipping, in terms of container ships, in terms of actual shipping containers. And same thing with semiconductors. When all right, we're locked down, says the lumber mill. Okay, we're open again. So what do? They cut down a tree. They bring some more wood to the lumber mill. What's the delay? A few days? To ramp up a semiconductor is very complex. Remember, these are all clean room fabrications where you have to wear those goofy bunny suits and go through 3 layers of, just to get that up to speed is like 90 days. It's not easy to suck all the air and dust out of a giant fabrication. And then you need certain materials, and some of these materials aren't available, hard to get. So part of the reason why the cost of new cars, why you can't get the new car you want, is a lot of these cars just can't get those chips. P.S. Reduce the manufacturing of new cars for 2 to 3 years, and guess what? Now you have a shortfall of used cars for 2 to 3 years. Every goofball, fun, stupid car I bought for nothing over the past couple of years to play with are now worth 30 to 50% more than I paid. If I was a car flipper, I could sell every car and I would make, some of these cars I would make 30%, some I'd make 50%. And it's not because I'm a genius when it comes to selecting collectible cars. You just can't find them. The market has gone berserk. Walk into, and it's not just Porsche and Ferrari. Walk into a Ford dealership and say, hey, I want to get this truck outfitted this way. 8 months. Walk into a Jeep dealer. Hey, I want a Grand Cherokee with this, and this. All right, you'll have it by March.
You're saying that's still the case now?
It's gotten better. It was a year. It's probably 4 or 5 months now.
Yeah, but you're pointing to that being one of the...
That's a factor driving used car prices. By the way, used car prices have begun to come back down. Watches have begun to come back down. When you just look at all the things that went berserk. Oh my God, the watch market went postal.
You're the only person I know paying attention to the watch market. I got emails last time you were on. People like, can you tell Ritholtz to stop talking about the watch market?
I'll tell you exactly why. It's not just watches and real estate.
I know. It's eggs. Boats. It was food. I mean,
if you want to know what the rest of the economy is going to look like, look at what the wealthy are spending money on or not spending money on. They're a pretty good early... Listen, if you got $2 million in the bank and you're sitting on millions of dollars worth of stock options, and suddenly you're cutting back your spending, and it's not just you, Pete, because I know you're sitting on all those Tesla options. It's
several other
multiply it by everybody else in the top 10% or 1% or whatever it is. Suddenly, what happens there matters. And P.S. watches began to roll over a year ago when I've been talking about inflation peaking June 2022 for a year now, right? One of the things I looked at lumber, I looked at copper, I looked at energy prices. One of the things we watched was the watch market go berserk and then roll over. And there are actually companies that put out a watch index that will show you exactly how these prices have gone. So, like, it's substantial enough that people are tracking this sort of thing. And it's, here, let's see if I can find a chart for you.
Well, let me ask you, hold on. Let me ask you one more thing because I got to wrap it. But I want to, this is
That's a wrap.
This is a bigger, issue that I just wanted to get a general answer to, because you're obviously paying close attention to the science around climate change, and you're a human being, and you're hot and uncomfortable and concerned about what's happening. And I'm wondering what, if anything, new you're paying attention to, what you're thinking about with this latest, the hottest July on record, hottest year on record. You've got a post at the blog about global air temperature by day. And I wonder how you're thinking about climate in terms of whether the economy, investment, national security, people's lives, jobs.
So here's a takeaway that I think a lot of people just don't think about. When you look at how long it takes for us to recognize just the difference between climate and weather. Last winter was the mildest winter in my recollection. Going back the past couple of years, they've all been pretty mild. When you look at the parade of record high heat over the past decade, each year has been hotter than the year before. And arguably, as hot as this year is, this year could be the least hot year for the rest of your life. Just stop and think about how banoodles that is.
Yeah.
Banoodles.
Well, that's what really, you're giving us a frame to look at it. Is there anything else?
What else? It's part of the reason why we need government action is that you can't rely on individuals to do this. You just can't. People are going to make decisions based on what's best for their family. One of my cars is a hybrid. The other car I'm in the middle of converting to electric. I can afford to do that. Not everybody. And the hybrid is 20 grand more than the non-hybrid. The same exact car. Not everybody is fortunate enough to say.
Systemic change. And systemic change can only come through government investment and regulation.
Through big institutions, right. You can't rely on people to...
Because as we've talked about forever, campaign finance is why fossil fuels are still around.
Listen, the fact that there is a concerted effort by a substantial percentage of people on the payroll of big fill in the blank, are we still arguing whether climate change is real? Remember, that was the first argument. Oh, climate change isn't real.
Sure.
Then the next argument is, well, the climate's fluctuating.
They're still making these arguments in a committee hearing just the other day. They're still making, both senators, Ron Johnson, plenty of Republican senators, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz questioning the science.
Do you remember back in the day, anytime anything terrible happened in a blue state, one of them evangelical preachers would come out and say, "This is God's punishment."
Yeah, Pat Robertson was right. He died recently
for supporting the gays. This is the. Okay, so now what of the people in Arizona? What are they being punished for? Right? The irony is, and I'm obviously being a little sarcastic about that, but the irony is that parts of the country that are most vulnerable to substantial climate change have governments and governmental leaders that don't believe in climate change.
I mean, look, the insurance industry abandoning homes in Florida and California and other places.
See ya. Gotta go.
What does that mean, by the way?
You'll all be underwater. We're going. By the way, eventually this population shift people have been talking about from the Northeast to Florida, that's transitory because you see it already happening in Miami. It's built on this sort of limestone. It's not bedrock. It's limestone. And the problem isn't water coming over the sides. The problem is water bubbling up.
Oh, is
underneath.
that right?
It's porous. Oh, God. There was a giant story in Rolling Stone a couple of years ago, and there was another one in.
I did not know that.
So Florida, and by the way, I met the mayor of Miami, who is a Hispanic,
running for president. That guy,
Hispanic Republican mayor.
Yeah,
and he's like one of the few Republican mayors that wants to talk about climate change rationally.
Well, yeah.
Right? Because his city is fucked. I mean, they don't have 100 years.
Well, yeah, but
they
look at,
probably don't have 50 years.
But it's being run by an extremist Republican. I mean, the governor who, I'm not sure what he's been on the record for climate, but that's Ron DeSantis.
I'm under the impression that he thinks the whole thing is a hoax.
I don't know. I got to look up his views on climate. All right. Well.
So anyway, listen, while all of us can do some changes personally, I don't take the private jet out anymore. You know that stays in the hangar. But you need the three biggest sources of climate change are the food we eat, the transportation we use, and how we provide electricity and heat and cool our homes. And so so it's not just the United States. The U.S. has radically decreased its coal use. We still use coal, but China has not shown any signs of doing that.
Well, you have to lead on that, and you have to sign these treaties, and you have to hold countries accountable. But it's always a good point. Ron DeSantis accused of catastrophic climate approach after his campaign launch. Republican trying to out-Trump Trump on climate. Experts as the governor says he rejects the quote politicization of weather. Okay,
right.
Well,
as he politicizes.
Yeah, Dr. Michael Mann says he's the one who's doing that by denying basic established science, the intensification of tropical storms with human-caused warming of the oceans. Yeah. All right, bud. I really appreciate you. As always, a great talk.
It's kind of crazy, isn't it? Stop and think about it.
Yeah,
it's.
I stop and think about it every day.
Look, so here's the. I started saying this earlier, and I kind of stopped myself, but I might as well just say it. The fascinating difference to me between what we do in the world of finance and what we do in the world of politics is the feedback loop. Like, if I believe something that's just made up bullshit, or I ignore reality, and I then, based on some false belief, put all my money into a hydrochloroquine company because I think that's the cure for the feedback loop in the world of investing is very quick. Hey, maybe it's not instant, but sooner rather than later, you're going to take it, upside your head. It's a very quick feedback loop. But vote for somebody who's going to cut your Medicaid when you retire in 30 years. And 30 years from now, your bad decision when you were younger will hurt your pocketbook.
It's a little bit longer of a feedback loop.
So much longer. And here's the ironic thing. Other people have been saying this about why are the states like Arizona and Texas and Florida that are most at risk to damage from climate change voting for people that are climate change deniers. And the previous answer has been the penalty for being wrong about this won't be felt for years, if not decades. Right. But that was decades ago. And now, what is it, 110 in Arizona for like 20 days straight? Faster. I mean, it's just now the wealthy folks in Arizona, they're up in the mountains for the summer. They're not there, or they're in Montana, Wyoming, or wherever they have their.
Well, everybody, even the wealthy, are affected by it.
Not as much.
You can't. Not as much.
The wealthy aren't affected as much.
No doubt about it. But I say that only because we need them in, and it's as much as wildfire smoke is not something you can prevent from coming over your house, no matter how much money you've spent on that.
I've interviewed Ray Dalio 4 or 5 times. Mm-hmm. He's one of the wealthiest hedge fund managers in the world. He's now retired. Ray Dalio started Ocean X, which is studying the effect on climate change on marine population, on coral reef, on food supply. Like, he's a smart guy who says, hey, I got all the money in the world it's worthless if we don't have a planet to live on. And Mike Bloomberg is another one who's a giant donor. Giant donor to conservation causes. And I could probably give you could probably split the top 1%. I wouldn't even say it's in half. It's probably 2 to 1, because most of these people are very competent, very intelligent, and are fact-based. There's a small percentage.
Long-term investors. They're not
right.
Nihilists.
And they have kids and grandkids and don't want to leave a scalded, we already have a Mercury in the solar system and a Venus in the solar system. We don't need another one of those. And that's the problem.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, my friend.
My pleasure. Always good to see you.
Well, there he goes, Barry Ritholtz, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I enjoyed being in it, and I also hope that you appreciated or took something from the opening. I try not to usually talk that long about anything. I mean, I rarely do, but when I do, I hope to make it count. So thank you very much for all of your support, for your paid subscriptions. I will be posting more content tomorrow, more shows on Thursday, probably Friday, and early next week. And then we will see what happens from there with my time off. And it could be anything. We'll see. Maybe there'll be a Trump indictment, and that will be something I won't be able to turn away from, nor will I want to. Okay, that could come today, as a matter of fact. I will talk to you tomorrow right here on Stand Up. Thank you. Please go support Jon Carroll, Pete Coe, Dr. Barry Hummel with Pops on Hops, Maddie Carlson, the ladies of The Hue. I mean, I could go on and on with the amazing contributors to this program and everybody else who has done so much to contribute to the program in so many different ways and whatever that they're doing, or just with friendship. All right, that's it. I'm done. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Off of your fence, even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense, and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down, boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.